right, let's get going. Let's get going. We're so glad you all are here with us today. We hope that you're having a wonderful start to your Monday. I want to begin with introducing our panelists that are here to talk today about homelessness and childcare. So let me first start with Dr. Christy Snuggs. Christy is the president of Early Years, a national organization working to ensure that all children benefit from affordable, high quality early care and education, which lays the foundation for successful life outcomes. She began her career in 1994 with the North Carolina Community College System, where she served as early childhood instructor, department chair, and director of the college's Child Development Center Laboratory. In 2021, Dr. Snuggs began as an educational consultant with the North Carolina Community College System office, and she held that progressively higher leadership position, serving as Vice President of Instruction and Chief Academic Officer with Edgecombe Community College and with the Child Development Division Director, and was the Child Development Division Director for Nash Edgecombe Wilson Community Action, which was previously known as NEED. She joined the Division of Child Development and Early Education in January of 2018 as the Deputy Director and served as the Director during the pandemic. Now she serves as the President of Early Years. She has her doctorate degree in Education and Leadership from East Carolina University, as well as her master's in Child and Family Development and bachelor degrees from Appalachian State University in Boone. We're so glad that you're here, Christy. And Charlene Reese is a consultant with Partners for Impact and the evaluator on this project that we're going to talk about today. She has 30 years of experience working with nonprofits, government agencies, academic institutions, and community collaboratives. Since joining Partners for Impact in 2018, Charlene has supported evaluation, program planning, strategic development, systems change, and project management. She works with the early years she has worked with early years, the Kaleidoscope Project, Lucy Daniels Center, Resources for Resilience, Haven House, and other agencies on projects focused on children's social and emotional well-being. Dr. Reese focuses on building the capacity of organizations to improve their own services, to understand their role in larger systems, and to work collaboratively with partner agencies. She holds an MPA and a doctorate in public administration with a research concentration in nonprofit organizational theory, public participation, and civic engagement. We're glad to have you, Charlene. And I am Beth Bordeaux. I am a co-owner with Partners for Impact. We are a company that is woman and LGBTQ owned. We're a small but flexible firm, but we have 12 consultants that all have deep experience working with nonprofit organizations, government entities, coalitions on community change and building capacity. We have a number of our consultants have deep experience working in both the homeless service space as well as early childhood spaces. And I've personally worked in homeless services for over 15 years, either as a consultant, working in various COCs or continuums of care across the state, or as an executive director of a shelter in Wake County, serving families experiencing homelessness. So I'm the project manager on this project. Charlene is the evaluator. Christy is the grantee serving with the organization that has received this grant. So next slide, please. Oh, that was our introduction slide. Sorry. Next slide. So I've already asked, and many of you are already doing this, to just introduce yourself, let us know who's in the room. For this webinar, we're going to ask you not to use the chat except for this initial introduction, but otherwise to use the Q&A. So if you'll see to the right of the chat on the bottom of your screen, there's a little question mark with Q&A below it, and that's where we want you to ask your questions. So please put your questions in there throughout the whole process. We will be pausing a couple of times to take questions. And what we are not able to answer, either because of time or because we don't have the answer right now, we will send back to you when we send these slides. So, first question answered. Yes, we will send these slides to you at the end of our session so that everyone will get them who either signed up today or those who are able to attend. And so we'll be getting those out as well as with answers to your questions. All right. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for all that you do. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this webinar is really to introduce you to the Young Child Homelessness Outreach Project. This project was funded by the North Carolina Division of Child Development and Early Education through a grant to early years, who is contracting with Partners for Impact for implementation. Core components of this project are related to raising awareness of young child homelessness across North Carolina, connecting children experiencing homelessness with high quality childcare, and strengthening community level response for young child homelessness. So those are our three main objectives that we're working towards. And we're directly working with shelters and homeless service providers, early childhood education organizations, and other family service providers. Next slide, please. Our intended impact. This is the change we want to make. So when we're doing work, we're always looking at what change are we trying to make for what group of people. So we want children and families that are experiencing homelessness to have positive childhood experiences and stability that helps them to build resilience. Now, the model that we're using to move the needle on this is connecting families experiencing homelessness or housing instability with high quality childcare through enhanced referral services and subsidies. And we'll talk more about what that means as we go further. Next slide. This is because every child deserves to have positive childhood experiences. And the more positive childhood experiences a child has, the more likely they are to be healthy and resilient. Next slide. So now I want to talk a little bit about what child homelessness looks like, how it's defined in North Carolina. So I know for some of you who are coming from the homeless service world, and we have a lot. So you guys are looking at the chat, hopefully, and seeing where folks are coming from. We have folks all over the spectrum on this webinar. So for some who are working in homeless services, you may know some of the things that I'm about to talk about. Those of you who are not working in homeless services, who are working in early childhood services or other family services, I hope this enlightens some of your understanding about child and family homelessness. So let's go to the next slide, please. As we think about children and families experiencing homelessness, these are a few quotes that are from real situations. Again, I'll remind you that I worked in a family shelter for a while, so met a lot of families that were going through this. And these are some things, these are real situations. When it gets too cold to sleep in the car, we go to a hospital waiting room. Well, we're actually staying in this barn. I've got some blankets and things, but it's safer than being on the street. I didn't know what to do. I knew he was going to want me to sleep with him or worse. But if I can get her a warm place to stay and keep us together, that's really all that matters. And then this last one is from a child. Will we be getting a home too? Next slide. In North Carolina, there's almost 40,000 students from pre-K to 12th grade. And this was a couple of years ago. This was 23, 24 data. Experiencing homelessness according to the McKinney-Vento definition, and I'll talk about what that is in a minute. So it's the broadest definition, but that's 2.2% of the whole student population in North Carolina. 71% of those students were doubled up, or they were staying with family. 18% were staying in hotels or motels. 7% were staying in a shelter, and 4% were unsheltered, which means they were literally sleeping outside or in a car or in a place that is not meant for people to sleep. That's almost 1,500 students sleeping outside or sleeping in a car. That 11,625 at the bottom of this slide, that's the additional children that are under 3 years old. So that first number includes pre-K forward. And so the children birth to 3, there's another 11,600 kids. And that was even a year earlier. So we're working right now on data, and we are really excited about being able to share more specific data and more broken down data around these numbers in the future. But this is what we have right now, and it's still it's devastating. That's a lot of kids. Next slide, please. Now the definitions, and again, I apologize to those of you who come from this world. You know all of this, but please know that part of the reason we're doing it this way is because we're bringing together those of you who are in that world with those who are coming from the early childhood space, who may not know this information. And again, it's going to flip on us in a minute when Christy starts talking about what's happening in young child spaces. So definitions of homeless, there are 2 definitions of homelessness. One comes from the HUD definition, and the other comes from McKinney-Vento, which is the school system's definition. So the HUD definition, as you can see here, is stricter. It's based on literal homelessness, which means you are sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation, a shelter, or living in an institution. There's an imminent risk of homelessness, or you're fleeing domestic violence. And that's a stricter definition. It's focused on housing or shelter. Its services include, shelter or temporary housing, street outreach, rapid rehousing, or other permanent housing solutions. That's what we're working towards with the HUD definition. McKinney-Vento definition is coming, like I said, from the school system. It's broader. It's based on education, and it has an education focus. So the services include basic needs, because when kids come to school hungry or they had no place to shower, that's something that we want to work on right away. So it's based on helping support those basic needs. It also provides some classroom support, making sure that kids are getting what they need to be able to do the work, and transportation, getting them back and forth to the same school, so that just because family is having to move back and forth, maybe staying with a different friend or a different family member or a hotel from time to time, making sure that transportation follows those moves and this child does not get their school disrupted, although we know that it very often becomes disrupted anyway. Not necessarily because of transportation, but just because nothing can move that fast when someone has to go today. And then, staying in school is kind of the primary focus. So again, that's a broader definition and does include families that are doubled up or families that are sleeping in hotels. That is not necessarily included in the HUD definition. Next slide, please. Now, this is really where it comes together, right? This is the reason for this project. It's because we know that homelessness is connected with trauma. So sometimes children may have experienced a series of traumatic events prior to or along with the experience of homelessness. Their families or they specifically may have experienced systemic racism or oppression, either overt or hidden. And that includes the, broken systems, and it can be traumatic to continue to try to move through broken systems when they're not set up to be helpful for families, and when in times they can actually be harmful to families. Um, there can be serious medical or mental health crisis in the family. There can be parental job loss, financial hardship, extreme stress, eviction. And again, when we're talking about a young child, what does eviction look like? Parents can't always protect their kids from losing all of their belongings because the doors got locked and you can't get back in. And your materials are going to get, everything that you owned is going to get discarded by the landlord. And you're having to figure out where you're going to go tonight. You can't always protect your child from that. Moms and dads definitely try to protect their kids, but they can't always. Violence and maltreatment. This doesn't always happen. Just because you're homeless doesn't mean you're experiencing these things, but sometimes you do. Kids have often had a loss of that sense of home, that community, friends, stability, or safety, that can be traumatic. Homelessness puts a family at risk of further trauma, maybe because of who they're around or a situation that they have to put themselves in order to, move from one place to the next or get help. So I do want to point out also that homelessness does not equal parental neglect. So homelessness in itself is not just an automatic, this is a neglectful situation. There needs to be a lot more discovery. Next slide, please. I am going to pass the torch now to my friend Christy and have her talk a bit about the impact of trauma on children.
Thanks so much, Beth. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here to talk about this important topic. And I just sort of want to follow up from some of the content that Beth shared. Those of us in the early childhood field, we don't want to think about that there's actually children that are and families that are living that are homeless and that they're experiencing all of this, but it's true. And even though the numbers that Beth shared is sort of shocking to me when I first started working with her several years ago, those numbers we know are on the low side. What we know is that we really do not have a good way to collect this information at the early childhood level. And a lot of it is based on assumptions. And many of you, especially those of you who are working in DSSs and providing subsidies, you're helping and you're making or ascertaining information that helps to identify if children are meeting that McKinney-Vento Act number. So what we see in the data many times is that it is whatever the school systems are projecting or collecting, they are projecting down to that early childhood level. So realize that this data could be a lot worse than we're actually showing you today. But I say all of that to really talk about this impact of trauma. And Beth has set it up so nicely. But what we know is that homelessness itself is not necessarily trauma, but children experiencing homelessness is probably more likely to encounter traumatic experiences. And this is a very busy slide, but what we know is that a lot of times homelessness does come from people living in poverty, extreme poverty. And when we think about trauma, I just want us to be reminded of what that truly means. What that means is that there is a physical or psychological response to some type of extraordinary stressful event or experience. And people that experience trauma have experienced something so distressing that it has overwhelmed their body's ability to function properly and their brain's ability to function properly. You know, all of us experience difficult things in life. But when there's trauma, it is very difficult or harmful experiences that happen continuously, and there's no way to navigate it. There's no way to get out of it. And that can negatively affect a child or a family member's life. And so, what you see here is that there are psychosocial adversity, there are things like parents, mothers especially, that may be suffering from stress, maternal stress or depression. They may because of that depression, they may act out in a way that they normally wouldn't. And then, because of their depression, the children, especially young children in those first 3 years of life, they are having those sensitive developmental periods, those periods that you really need to be developing the brain to its utmost potential. And when parents or the mothers or the fathers who are experiencing this trauma are not able to provide a very nurturing and loving necessarily environment because of the stress and trauma that they're experiencing, it impacts the development of those children. And you see here that at 15 months, language is developing, and that can be affected considerably by the interactions that the family members are having. Or even by the time they're 2, there's this whole attachment and IQ. And if we're not able to address this during those periods of sensitive development, then it could have long-lasting developmental effects on the child. But it's not just that that's happening. There's also biological changes that actually happen from families that are experiencing stress. There's a reduced, many times in the brain itself, there's reduced activity in some of the most important areas. There's not the same firing of those neurotransmitters back and forth. And what that does is that alters the brain's activity so that that the children themselves will never be able to develop, may never be able to develop the coping skills that they need because of what's happening. So there's alterations of the actual brain itself. It reprograms how the brain deals with stress. It affects the immune system and the regulatory system of the body. And then you see all of this happening as that child matures. You will see that there could be cognitive defects as they get older. There could be disease progression that happens. They could have social issues of not being able to interact, which could lead to things like unemployment and incarceration. So this is extremely important for us to understand of how it impacts the life of those children and families. Next slide, please. So there are ways, though, that we can mitigate trauma. And the way we do that is through positive early childhood experiences. And what we want is to provide protective factors for these children. We want them to be able to play and have predictable, nurturing environments. And we want them to have adults in their lives that recognize them, that praise them, that accept them. And they can do that by having supportive friends of their own. So if you look over on this slide, there are the 5 protective factors that we know happens when children are exposed to positive childhood experiences. When families have a knowledge of parenting and child development, and they learn that it's not only about affection. We know that all family members, that parents love their children, but they also need to provide respectful communication and listening, have consistent rules established and expectations, and to do that in a safe and nurturing environment so that it promotes independence of those young children. And a lot of times, if you're homeless, you can't do those kinds of things, or it's much more difficult to. And when you do that, it helps to build resilience. But trauma stops that resilience. It doesn't allow a child to bounce back as effectively. And then there's concrete supports that are needed. How do you best meet the needs of the children? How do families assess those essential needs like health care and child care and mental health services? Are they able to do that? Do they know where to go? These are things that we can help homeless families provide those resources. Social connections. If families have emotional supportive family and friends, it can help even in an environment where they're doubled up. And then what all of that does is when children are in nurturing, developmentally positive relationships with caring adults, it can help them get control of their behavior. It can help them develop appropriately. So on the next slide, if you'll move forward, what we know and why we're talking about this and why Beth and I are working together with the homeless service providers and early childhood providers is that high quality childcare can provide many of those things that I just talked about, those protective factors for families who may be experiencing homelessness. High quality childcare provides stable structured environments. These classrooms can be profoundly healing for the families and for the children who are experiencing homelessness because they offer support and they offer stability. They can provide this stable and structured environment, which is crucial for children who may be experiencing in their home life this uncertainty and instability. Additionally, early childhood programs can connect families to resources. They can help them find medical care and dental care, helping address health needs and promoting the overall well-being that the child needs. In essence, these early childhood classrooms provide a vital lifeline for children and families experiencing homelessness. They offer safe, stable, and supportive environments where children's sensitive periods of development are nurtured and enhanced, and they can learn and grow and thrive. And so we want to get those two groups connected. And in many of our communities, those connections are not as clear as they need to be. And that's what we're hoping to do as part of this project. Next slide, please. When we can make those connections, what we know is that we can make a difference in these children's lives and we can help them to move forward. So I want to pause right here, and Charlene has been managing our chat or our question and answer area. Charlene, is there any really big questions that have come up so far?
We do not have any questions so far, but I will encourage people to put them in the question and answer box if you have questions up till about what's been said so far. Nothing so far.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to the next slide because I want to talk a little bit more about what we're doing specifically in this project related to early care and education. So I've already said that we want to make the connections to childcare. And so how do we get families, those of us who are interacting with families and we've ascertained that they may or may not be homeless, how do we connect them to high quality childcare? Well, what we're looking at in this particular project is the Child Care Resource and Referral Network, which we lovingly call CCR&R, all those acronyms. And what we do, there is a whole statewide system that provides services across the state. And I know we have some of our CCR&R providers on the call with us today. What they do in one part of the work is they provide what we call consumer education and referral. They assist families in finding childcare that meets their needs. A lot of people don't even know that we do that. They go online and they look for childcare. That's wonderful if that works for you. But we have trained experts who can help you find the right childcare based on your family's needs. The other thing that they do is they don't just help connect you with the childcare facilities and if they have vacancies and if they serve special needs kids, or if your child has a medical diagnosis and needs assistance, they can help with that as well. But they also help the families to understand what high quality looks like. They will give you advice, and there's resources available so that as a family member, when you go and visit child care centers, you can look for those key indicators of quality. You can look for an educated teacher. You can look for small child staff ratios so that there's that ability for those teachers to build that nurturing and trusting relationship with those children. And it can help you to find small class sizes so that the children can have that time, that individualized time for communication and interaction. All of those key quality indicators, they can educate families on that information. And then in addition to that, they can provide information about financial assistance and resources. And so they can connect you to your local DSS or organization in your community that offers childcare subsidies. They can help you see if that childcare facility accepts those subsidies and make those connections and help the families to navigate the system instead of people having to go to 15 different people to get the answers. Childcare resource and referral helps do that for the families. And as part of this project, we're making it even more easy, making it easier because we're doing enhanced referrals. And what I mean by that is they're keying in on these individuals, especially if we know that they're homeless families. And we're providing even more information about financial assistance and help with maybe filling out or completing the applications. Verifying and confirming vacancies for the families for particular child cares that they want, setting up visits, doing a warm handoff, even providing interpretation if needed. So we are going above and beyond, and we want to see how we can help families navigate the system. Next slide, please. And as I've already mentioned, it's also about providing information about childcare subsidies. And many of you on the call are working in your DSSs, and we want to make that connection. We want our CCR&Rs to be working collaboratively with our subsidy providers and providing them information about their county of residence and if there's a waiting list and if there's availability of funds. This says a 5% set aside. Is actually, I know, a 4% set aside, so that's just an error on our slide. But we know that every community, and some of you are well aware of this, but others may not be, but children that are homeless are one of the two priority categories that are in this 4% set aside that every county has. So if we know that children are homeless, we can get them services much sooner. We can actually put them in childcare if a family member presents themselves and provides a report that they are homeless. If we can find a childcare facility that is convenient for the family, we can get that child started immediately. And then the child and family has 30 days to actually provide the verification that they have a job or in school or show some need for care. So we want to make sure that families are connected to the resources that are available. We want to make sure that families are connected to the financial resources. And in many communities, it's just about making sure that we're connected and collaborating with one another. Next slide. And I am going to turn this over to Charlene, and she is going to guide us through the next part of this presentation.
Great. Thank you, Christy. And I'm going to share with you all more specifics about this particular young child homelessness outreach project that Partners for Impact is working with Early Years and the other CCR&R council agencies on. Again, this is a grant funded project through the Division of Child Development and Early Education at the state. And what we are doing in this particular project is we're working in communities across the state. We're choosing a few communities in cohorts to focus our outreach efforts there. Right now, we are working in Edgecombe and Nash, around Rocky Mount, in Catawba County, Chatham, Wake, and Guilford. And we're in various stages of rolling out our work in each of these places. And we have consultants from Partners for Impact working on the ground in those communities. We have goals. The goals of the project are at three levels. At the individual level, we're really working to increase the knowledge and understanding at family service providers about the importance of high quality childcare and what the CCR&R services are, particularly around enhanced referral services and how to connect families to those services. When we say family service providers, we mean shelter providers, but also other providers who may be encountering families who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness or meet the definition of homelessness by the McKinney-Vento standards. So those could be food pantries, faith communities who have additional services for families, medical clinics, mutual aid agencies. So our outreach folks are on the ground trying to make connections with those providers, work with families so that we can reach a broader population of families who would need these services and could benefit from childcare and resource and referral services. It's very important for us to be using this network of family service providers who already have relationships with these families. What we know is that a lot of families, don't recognize themselves as homeless. They don't identify as homeless because they are not living on the street or in their car. If they're doubled up with a family, where they're living in a motel, they may not see themselves as homeless. And so they don't necessarily come forward, but they may be using other services that are often linked to housing instability, like food pantries or free medical clinics. So that's why we are partnering with those agencies to really spread our reach of information. So we are also directly supporting those family service providers to share the resources about CCR&R with families. And that's going to look different in each community. In some communities, it will be helping those family service providers hand out flyers with direct information about how families can access the child care resource referral system in their county where they are. And again, those child care resource and referral folks can connect the families with subsidies and the financial assistance services that they need, as well as other resources. It's not a lot of counties have additional resource referral, not just child care. So it's really trying to get these families connected with more services. As Christy said, there's also we're making efforts to connect the two sectors, actually multiple sectors, the child care and early education, early child development system with the homeless service provider system and the social services system. So some communities, there's lots of connections, there's lots of ongoing work where they are talking and everybody knows each other. They are able to do warm handoffs and really come around families. In other communities, there's not those connections. And what we know is when there's not connections, families fall through the cracks, and the system is even harder to navigate when the agencies that the families have to deal with are not talking to each other and people don't know where to send them and what they'll need when they get there. So our work is also about strengthening those relationships and bringing providers together across sectors. And then we're also trying to as we do this work, we recognize that there are a lot of barriers to families accessing high quality childcare. Those barriers are at multiple levels. And so we're working to identify those and to do what we can to bring those forward and advocate at various levels for changes. If we can go to the next slide. Some of those barriers, and I know that many folks on here do work in childcare or they work in social services, and you know that just because we say we want to get families into high quality childcare does not mean that that happens instantly when the family shows up. We do know that there's systemic barriers that are in place and preventing that from happening seamlessly. Those just some of these, and there's more, but a few of those are the availability of childcare slots in communities. There's often more families needing childcare than there are places to slots to take them. There's a teacher shortage and a lot of challenges to keeping childcare, all the childcare classrooms open. Accessibility for families, sometimes the location is difficult for them. They don't have transportation. The child care center might not be able to provide transportation. In more rural areas, there's no public transportation and limited options for getting children from remote locations into a child care center. Also, hours of operation if families are not working. Parents are not working the 8 to 5 shift. If they're working early mornings, they're working evening shifts, they're working overnight, that can also be a challenge. We also recognize that there's waiting lists for subsidies. Not all families can get subsidies because there's not enough available, that there are eligibility rules. A lot of those are set at the federal level, not at the state or local, around having to have a reason to receive the subsidy, including being working or being employed or in school. That the subsidy does not cover the full cost of care. So there's a gap there, and communities don't always have the resources available to bridge that gap for families if they're not able to pay to make up the difference between the cost of childcare and the subsidy. There's a lot of turmoil in the system right now. A lot of the funding that was made available during the pandemic is ending and sunsetting, and communities are trying to figure out what to do without those funding. And then, as we know, there's Medicaid changes on the horizon. There's other changes in the education system. We're not really sure what the future holds. And that's again at the state level and at the federal level. And then as the churn continues and we see more people experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness or experiencing unemployment, there's an increasing demand for decreasing resources. So we recognize and we are working to surface these barriers to really kind of get at the core root causes of them and figure out how do we advocate and how do we work with partners to advocate for changes that would make the system work better for families. Next slide, please. So we have our project, our Young Child Homelessness Outreach Project, has two components. One is this local level where we're working directly with providers and the child care resource and referral agencies. And then we also have a statewide outreach. Many of you, we hope, are already receiving our Young Child Homelessness Journal of North Carolina. We've put out two editions so far, and it is a quarterly newsletter, e-newsletter, that is sharing information about young child homelessness, trying to increase awareness about the impact on children of homelessness and the extent of it. we're trying to really bring together and share strategies that make an impact right now. So we know of some as we are working with organizations. If you are receiving the newsletter and you feel like you have some really good strategies that are working in your community and you want to share them out with others across the state, you can email us and we will share those in the newsletter. We really want to be able to crowdsource the information and share out good strategies across the state. And then we're also collecting news and research and other related articles, statistics as reports come out at the state and federal level, trying to make sure that people know that those have come out and are able to access them. So if you would like to, we will be sending out these slides and you will be able to access the links in the slides. So if you would like to sign up for the Young Child Homelessness Journal of North Carolina, there will be a link in those slides. And then we would appreciate your sharing the link because we are trying to create a really comprehensive statewide database of providers of family, young child, and homeless services, so that we can really make sure that the issue of young child homelessness and the solutions are spread widely across the state. So I am going to now send it back to Beth.
Hello. And actually, if let's have all of us pop back up, of the panelists come back to the forefront because I have a few questions that have come through the Q&A in the last little bit. And so I just want to pause right now and hit some of those questions and then, give you guys another chance to ask more questions if you have any. So if anybody has any more questions, pop them in right now. But one of them is around there was several around subsidy and around the verification of homelessness, the work requirement, and how long it takes. So I'll give a quick response to those, and then I'm gonna toss it to Christy and see if she has anything more. But I'll say how long it takes. It varies in every community. So some communities may have a waiting list on their subsidy dollars, but they may still be able to bring a child that is experiencing homelessness to the top of that waiting list with those priority dollars. So we don't know, right? It depends on if those priority dollars have been spent yet or not. There may be also a community that has not completely spent all of their funding. And so there may be open spaces at that point. In addition to subsidy dollars that are often coming through DSS, there can be other dollars that are paid for through Smart Start or through other local sources that can help, kind of bridge some of the gaps, maybe that subsidy dollars have in order to address some needs. And we've even had conversations in some communities where they're taking those extra dollars and also prioritizing children experiencing homelessness with them. So there's some conversations to happen around that and how we could potentially work on the best solutions for your community based on what those dynamics are in your community. And let me hit one more about subsidy before I throw it all to you, Christy, is the verification of homelessness and work requirement. Actually, I'm going to just toss that over to you now, Christy. Do they have to verify homelessness in order to meet that criteria? And do they have to have a work requirement?
Okay, so I'm not the expert on subsidy. There's some of the folks on this call that are. What I wanted to say is, first and foremost, is that's why you need to connect with your child care resource and referral in your local community. They can help make those connections, answer those questions, and help to navigate the system for providers. Mary Irwin has dropped the website for our Child Care Resource and Referral Network, North Carolina, in the chat, as well as a 1-800 number, which is 1-888-600-1685. If anyone ever needs that, please make sure that you use those. But what I would say to you is the child care subsidy workers are trained in such a way that they know how to ask certain questions to determine if the child meets the definition, the McKinney, the family meets the McKinney definition for homelessness. So they know how to ascertain and ask those questions. And that would be the first step, is we need to make the connections. They also know how to prioritize. And because that set aside is available, they can, if they are talking to the parent and the parent reports the information that the family is homeless, they can serve if they have the dollars available, they can serve those children immediately. There is no wait time. And then there's a 30-day window for the families to verify their need for care. There is still to be in the subsidized child care program in North Carolina, you do have to have a need for care. And there are 5 of those needs. One is employment, of course. One is education. One is CPS, CWS, or developmental needs. So there does have to be a need for care met, even with homeless families. But there is set aside dollars that each community has that can be used for homeless children or special needs children. But like Beth said, it really just depends on the spending of that community, the need. And what I will tell you statewide is that we had a lot of federal investment through ARPA dollars that were added in over the last several years, and that money has gone away. We've used it. It's gone. And as a result, we have steadily seen the number of children that have been able to be served across the state decrease over the last year. And we've seen our waiting list numbers statewide increase to almost 16,000 children. But what I will say to you is there are ways to get them connected. And like Beth said, if the subsidized child care program is not available in the community, there may be other resources. And that's where the R&Rs are set up. And with this particular project, we are making those connections, and they're doing those enhanced referrals to help families navigate through the system.
Awesome. I will say that in some of our, I think it's our most recent e-newsletter that went out, we shared some information from Schoolhouse Connection about states all across the country, and each state has a little scorecard on it. And one of those scorecard elements is, does your state waive that work requirement? Or that work education requirement for families experiencing homelessness? North Carolina is a no. But that's also why, we hope that there will be more advocacy around what is it that we need here in North Carolina for our families and children. There was a couple of other questions I want to highlight. Buncombe County, are there enhanced CCR&R services in Buncombe specifically? Because it was not one of the counties that are listed. I will say that there are enhanced services across many counties that are not the ones that we are actually targeting first in our direct outreach and local work. But Christy, do you know if Buncombe is?
I do not know off the top of my head, but we will get that answered in the information that we send out. Many are offering enhanced referrals, but others are not. But it really is it's a resources question in many situations. Are there the resources in that community to do that? Because it does take a lot of extra time from the staff, but we can definitely follow up and get that answered for that community.
Great. And then one last, go
ahead. Can I just add on to that? So the slide, Fiona, if you can go back 2 slides. So we listed these 5 communities where we're working on this enhanced outreach project. And those are the 5 counties where this particular outreach project is working. There's CCR&R services in all of the counties.
Correct.
Some of the counties have the enhanced referral services, but we are doing this outreach to the other family serving providers in these 5 counties. we have another year of this project. And so we are looking at other communities to partner with. So we'll just put in a plug now that if you want, you think that we could come to your county and work with your family serving providers and your CCR&R system, and you want to maybe talk about having this focused outreach to families in your community, then you can reach out to Beth or one of us, and we can talk about coming to your county. So just to clarify kind of the difference between the focused community outreach and the CCR&R services.
And I would just add that the real advantage to the western part of the state is Southwestern Child Development Institute is the CCR&R providing organization in those communities out west. And they also administer subsidy in a large percentage of the western counties. So there's already that connection between the subsidy and the child care resource and referral. I do know that many of them, like I mentioned, just don't have the resources to do enhanced services for referral, but they are very interested. So I do know that our plan is to work with some communities in the West in the second year of this project. So stay tuned, and hopefully by doing this in these communities, it sets up a model that can be sustained and expanded statewide. That's our goal.
Awesome. Thank you. There's a few more questions, but I think we're going to hit pause on that and move to our next slide. And I promise if we didn't get your question answered, we will absolutely get it to you. So we want you to help us plan our next webinar. So just like the work that we're doing with the e-newsletters, we're also trying to do multiple webinars. We don't really have a set time frame for those right now, but we're really interested in what you would like to see. So please go ahead and fill out this poll that we just posted. Any of these topics that you might be interested in having our next webinar on, we'd love for you to go ahead and answer this poll. And if you don't see the answer that you are just itching for, please just post that right in the chat. So we're going to go back to chat now, not Q&A. Post it right in the chat if you have topics around this young children and homelessness and the way systems come together and how we can better serve young children when they're experiencing homelessness. If you have things you want to hear about, post that in the chat, but also please hit this poll and let us know there. There was one question I will kind of respond to real quickly while you guys are doing the poll. And that is that what about family childcare homes, and how can they best support families that are experiencing homelessness? And is that any different than the way childcare centers might support families experiencing homelessness? And I would say, first of all, it's probably not a whole lot different. The biggest thing you can do is have some grace. Just have grace. Recognize that their lives are topsy-turvy, and communicate well. That would be the second thing that I would offer. Communicate well and communicate often and communicate with multiple different avenues. Recognizing that when someone is experiencing homelessness, even if they're stabilized momentarily in temporary housing, it's still a pretty chaotic time. And so it's going to be hard to keep up with communications. And so that would be the two things that immediately come to mind. We will get you some more information about that as well. And we're actually, there is some specific things that can happen within childcare centers and childcare homes in order to help you create better spaces and so forth that focus on children that are experiencing homelessness.
Beth, can I jump in too? And
Yes,
what
ma'am.
I would add to that is, I think what you said is so right. But the other thing about family child care homes is they tend to be very prominent in rural communities. And also they tend to have more flexibility, that they have hours that meet families' needs better. And many times they also serve children with special needs. So they I think family child care providers are a huge part of this solution because they provide some extra services that sometimes centers can't do. They provide, more flexibility in hours. They work with more than one child in a family. They could all be there together. And so there is I think, some really good advantages for working with family child care providers. And again, connect with the R&R network because if they are licensed or regulated family child care, they're also going to be able to be referred, be on that referral list as well.
Okay, so I'm going to get our tech support to go ahead and close the poll. There you go. Boom, it just went away. And let's see, can we see any of those responses? Okay, great.
Okay, we got some work to do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. This is fantastic, y'all. Well, we will get to working and we will bring you new webinars on some of these topics. It sounds like very much around community change, but also the most responses were around, I'm interested in all of these. So that's fantastic. We look forward to continuing to share with you. Let's pop to the next slide, please. So we really put this slide together for you to have when we send all the slides back out. So our time is about up, but I just want to point out these are the things that you can do right now, right? You can sign up for that Young Child Homelessness Journal of North Carolina e-news. It gives you great information, really concrete things that you can do, as well as the broader research that's going on around this topic. Reach out to us if you want us to work in your community. Learn more about CCR&R services and reach out to them. Bringing Families Home is a public awareness campaign. It's on the Early Years website. You have the link there, as well as a link to many other resources around young child homelessness. Early Years has been doing this for years. They've been working on young child homelessness for about 5 or 6 years now, pretty intentionally and intensively. And there's quite a bit of research and information on their website. We have done some work with them, and some of that content is here around shelters, that shelters can do, things that you can do, as well as things that we can do across sectors if we work in whole communities. So just encourage you. There's the action plan for early childhood homelessness support system that was put together by Yay Babies, which is a statewide coalition addressing this issue as well. I'm talking really fast now. Thank you guys. It is after 2 o'clock. We deeply appreciate you being here today, listening, and really for all the work that you do, because we know you're the ones with feet on the ground, loving on these kids and these families and helping out. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.